Hey everyone, it's Andrew with the Imagine Academy team, and in today's video, we're going to be going over Replica Denture Scan and Design. Medit has various types of denture cases, such as full, replica, and implant-supported dentures. The Replica Denture feature duplicates an existing denture by scanning the outer and inner surface of the original denture. You can then take that scan and forward it off to a lab, or bring the scan into exocad to then design your own duplicate denture to manufacture. All right, let's go ahead and start by first selecting New Case in the upper right-hand corner. Here we're going to want to put in our patient name. In this case, I'm just going to be doing Replica Denture. Then we're going to go ahead and select Register and Scan. Here we have our work order form for a specific patient. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go down to arch at the very bottom here. We're going to be selecting our upper and lower arch, and we're going to be choosing denture as our type. Next, we're going to want to choose our specific method. In this case, we're doing our denture replica case. And lastly, we're going to want to pick our shade. Once everything here is all set and looks good, you can go ahead and click Save. And then we'll click Scan, which will prompt our Medit Scan for Clinics software to open up. Once the software opens, you see that your scanner will automatically connect. In this case, we are using the Medit i900. And the first thing I want to draw your attention to is these boxes at the top. These are going to be your actual individual scan stages for the scanning process. And the sequence that we're going to be scanning in is going to go maxillary denture first, then mandibular, and then finally the occlusion. Before we begin scanning, there's a few things that we're going to want to do. The first is to apply a scan spray to our denture to reduce the amount of reflection. The next is going to be to take our scan depth and actually make sure that it's all the way up so that we can scan the deepest parts of the denture, such as the alveolar ridge. And finally, we're going to want to turn on our smart color filtering feature, which is located over here in the bottom. This is going to allow us to scan in our glove color to avoid scanning any information that isn't related to the teeth or gingiva. In this case, I unfortunately have a gray color, which is not going to be able to be registered under the color filter. But if you have any color such as blue, green, or purple, I recommend scanning in your glove to help you with the process. Let's start by scanning our upper denture first. The scanning should always be processed in the following path. Once we turn on the scanner, we always want to begin on the rugae. And from here, we want to build up our main scan data by scanning the alveolar ridge on both the left and the right side. Once we have our fitting surface scanned, we're next going to move on to our border. For this, we want to make sure that we're constantly moving back to our common data, which in this case is going to be our fitting surface. Once we have our border scan, we're next going to move on to our polished surface. For this, we want to make sure that we include the buccal side, specifically focusing on the vestibule and the frenum. Once we have that scanned in, we can go ahead and finish scanning our palate. Lastly, we can flip our denture over and begin scanning our artificial teeth. I always recommend starting with the buccal surface first, then moving to the occlusal, and finally scanning in the lingual. In this case, if we have any areas of data that don't seem to line up properly, what we can do is we can actually first try to optimize. In this case, you can see near our palette area, we don't have the best stitching. It seems like we have a little bit of overlapping data. So what we can do is we can first select optimize down here on this bar. If the optimization doesn't delete all the noise data and you still have some unaligned areas, the best thing to do would be to use your polyline trimming tool up here in the left-hand corner and simply delete the area of data that you're concerned with. And then simply resume scanning from where you left off. Once we finish scanning our upper denture, we can proceed to the next scan stage to begin scanning our lower. This is going to be the same exact scanning process as we just did for our upper denture. Once it switches over to our next scan stage, we can grab our scanner and we can begin by scanning the fitting surface first. Once we scan our fitting surface, we can then move on to the border. Once we have our border scanned, we then move on to the polished surface. Lastly, we can scan our artificial teeth. Once I finish scanning the lower denture, we can then move on to doing the bite scan. For the occlusion, I always recommend that if possible, the patient wear the denture in the mouth during the scan. Otherwise, make sure that the denture is firmly held in place in the correct bite, and we're going to want to implement a zigzag motion, scanning at least 3 to 4 teeth on the posterior of the buccal side. You can see once the scan data is captured, it'll actually turn a green color indicating that your bite has been captured. Now let's move on to the second occlusion. Here we're going to be doing the same exact thing on the other side of the arch. Again, you can see our scan data has turned green, indicating that our bite has been captured. From here, the software is simply going to try to optimize our data for the best results. Once we've completed our occlusion scan, we can go ahead and just review our scan to make sure that we didn't miss any important areas. Once we've confirmed the scan looks good, we can go ahead and select complete, hence this check mark in the upper right hand corner, which will then allow us to process our data to produce an STL file. In this case, we're going to want to choose create denture replica data. What's going to happen now is it's going to save our scan. It's going to close out of the Medit scan for clinics and bring us back into Medit link where our file will begin processing. Once our case finishes processing, individuals can then take that STL file and decide to either send it directly to a lab via Medit link, or you can then bring the STL into exocad to complete your own duplicate denture design. In the next part of the video, we're actually going to be taking this file and bringing it into exocad and showing you how to complete that design for a duplicate denture. Now we're going to go into the design portion of our duplicate denture. This feature in exocad allows us to reline and reproduce your patient's denture by copying the original prosthesis within the existing workflow. The first thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to select new case in our dental DB software in exocad. Once we've created a new case, we're going to want to set up our database for this specific patient. So the first thing I'm going to want to do is we're going to pick our client. In this case, I'm just going to do Imagine Academy. And then we're going to pick our patient name, in which case I'm just going to do Replica Denture. Once we have that set, we can go over to our work order form and we can select one individual tooth. And under our material configuration, we're going to be picking full denture. And then we're going to pick our material. In this case, I'm going to be printing the base and milling the teeth. Once that's selected, we have a couple of options and parameters to choose from. Most importantly, we want to make sure that our copy existing denture is turned on. So make sure yes is checked off, and that our 360 denture scan is also checked off. Once that's all set, we can press OK. Once we click OK, it's going to give us an option to choose if we want to do a single arch or both. In this case, we're doing both the upper and the lower denture, so we're going to choose this top option here. As you can see, it's going to apply those settings to each individual tooth for both the upper and the lower jaw. Once this is all done, we can go ahead and click Save. But before we go into designing our case, I do recommend going down to the bottom and selecting Open and Explore. What this will do, well, this will open up the specific patient file for this case. And what we can do is we can take the Medit scans that we previously exported into a specific folder and bring them into this specific exocad folder so that we can easily load them into our design process. So here under my desktop, I have my Medit cases folder. I'm going to find the case that we just scanned, our replica denture, and I'm going to grab both our upper and lower and copy those and paste them directly into this Open and Explore folder that we have here. Okay, once our files have been brought in, we can close that out and we can go ahead and click Design. As you can see, once we click Design, it'll prompt our dental CAD software to automatically open up. The first thing that we need to do here is import the 2 denture scans that we brought into the specific patient folder. Here it's asking us to first load in our upper jaw, so I'm going to double click on maxillary denture, and then I'm going to bring in our lower jaw. Once we have our scans imported, we're first going to set our scan data orientation. For this, you just want to make sure that your occlusal surface is facing upwards towards you. Once that's set, we can go ahead and click Next. And here we have our 3D data editor. Considering we already did all our trimming and modifications in the Medit software, we can go ahead and skip through this. So the first real step in the wizard is going to be to draw our denture margin. 3.2 does a really good job of identifying this margin on the ridge, but there are some times that you might need to make some corrections, specifically in the palate area where it goes from hard to soft palate. All right, margin looks good there, so we're going to move on to the lower. If we do need to make any modifications, it's as simple as grabbing these individual points and moving them to their desired location. All right, our lower margin looks good, so I'm going to go ahead and select Next. Here we have our denture tooth segmentation step in the wizard. Essentially what we're going to do is we're going to be choosing each individual tooth, and the software will then create a denture tooth from that specific selection. So as you can see on the left side, it's asking us to choose the current tooth, which in this case is going to be tooth number 17. So I'm just going to left click on that tooth number and proceed to the next tooth all the way to the other side. The software does a great job of segmenting this teeth and even has this nice color map to show you the difference in each selection. If you do need to make any corrections, we can simply go to correction over here on the right side and use our brush tool to draw on any areas that we want to include in our segmentation. But in this case, everything looks good, so we're going to go ahead and do the same thing on the lower jaw. Same thing, I'm just going to be clicking on each individual tooth that the software is asking for. Okay, once I review that all of my teeth are properly outlined and segmented, we can go ahead and move on to the next step. Here, the software is going to ask us if we want to correct the placement of our denture teeth, but since we're copying the existing denture, there's really no need, and the placement is already in our desired position. So we can go ahead and just skip through that and click Next. Here, just letting us that some teeth are intersecting. That's completely okay. After the tooth placement, we have the option to actually freeform our denture teeth. Here, we can choose to actually modify our teeth or occlusion if desired. It allows us to make changes such as adapting the static occlusion and proximal and also smoothing the outer surface just like we can do in the full denture module. So now I'm going to go ahead and check out to see if we need to make any changes or adjustments to our denture teeth. First things I want to do is smooth out some of the areas where the segmentation might not have been perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Once our outer surface is smoothed out to our liking, we can then move to our adaptation. Here, I simply recommend adapting both the static and a proximal occlusion. Okay, once everything looks okay, we can go ahead and select Next. The next step in our wizard is actually going to be to determine our denture-based bottoms. This is going to determine how the actual denture fits in the patient's mouth. Typically, I like to leave all these parameters at default unless I'm going to actually be milling the base, which in this case I am not. But if you are, you can let the software know to consider the tool diameter by checking this box right here. Otherwise, I'm just going to go ahead and click Next. It's going to create our bottoms for our upper jaw, and we're going to do the same exact thing for the lower. For our connectors, I first like to hide our gingiva scan by turning off our denture base parts. Next, I like to set the connector height and width to about 3 millimeters. And then for our connector shape, I typically like to go with the teardrop right here. Once that's been selected, I'm going to apply the cross-section / shape changes to each of the connectors. As you can see, these connectors are a little bit too low, so I'm actually going to raise them for both the upper and the lower jaws. Once we've adjusted the connectors for the upper and lower, we can go ahead and select Next. This next step is going to allow us to actually freeform our gingiva and our denture base. Usually, I like to just smooth out a bit of the denture base where there might be some rough areas or some sharp portions. Other than this, we can actually use our point and knife tool to add a little bit of characteristic for the root structure. So here what I can do is I can reduce my brush size and my strength, and I'm going to go to add and remove and hold down shift to remove some material to enhance our root structures. Once I'm happy with the freeforming of my denture base, we can go ahead and select next again. In the last step of our wizard, we're going to be adapting our denture base to the teeth. Essentially what this is going to be doing is creating tooth pockets on our denture base. Again, for this, I usually like to keep the parameters at default unless I'm going to be milling. Repeat the same process with the lower. After our denture base adaptation is finished, you can see we now have our completed denture replica with separate base and teeth. So if I go ahead and hide our merged parts, we can see that we have our created tooth pockets for our teeth. Once we're happy with our design, we can choose to create a model directly from here by choosing Design Model, or we can save our STL files into our patient-specific folder by clicking Next. As you can see, once we're done, it'll prompt us to go back to our dental DB, where then we can go back into Open and Explore and find that our STL files are readily available here for us to then bring to the mill to manufacture or to the printer to print. That concludes our denture replica scan and design video. Thank you guys for watching.